And welcome back to another episode of the Total Sports Live podcast. This is Giovanni Erner, whom I'm joined by my guy Harrison Brown. As we're going to talk about not football this week. Usually on the podcast, we talk about some football. We even talk about some basketball here and there. We mix in some Sixers talk, even though we haven't done that. I feel like we haven't done that in a while on the
A
podcast.
while,
It's probably been like what, a year and some
at
change, and we
least.
probably talked
Right.
like hardcore basketball. We might have to get back to that when the playoffs start actually. So I gotta put that down on my list. Talk
Right.
about Sixers coming up with the playoffs. Actually, we might have to do that. So definitely gonna mix in some Sixers talk. However, when we talk about a different Philadelphia team, and we're not talking about the Eagles, we did that already. We're not talking about the Flyers because they don't exist and there's a little bit. Can't talk about the Union because we're really not that knowledgeable on the game of soccer. We'll be talking about the Stars. We'll be talking about them a lot this year, but we're talking about the defending NL champion Philadelphia Phillies, who will be opening up the regular season. Yes, folks, when you have a good baseball team that plays until the first week of November, the offseason seems really short. So by the time you knew it, the calendar switched to 2023, you say, oh, it's almost time for pitchers and catchers. And it also helps when you have a football team that's also making a deep playoff run, who plays in the Super Bowl. So it's in February, so it's already time for like pitchers and catchers to report, and you're already here to a new season. So that's what we're going to talk about on today's podcast. We're going to be breaking down the Phillies, looking at the 2023 season preview as they'll be opening up the regular season on Thursday. Yes, folks, on Thursday in Texas against those Rangers. Jacob deGrom will get the start. Former Met, now in Texas. Nola versus deGrom on opening day, which should be a fun matchup. Should be a fun series overall because I think the Rangers also have Nathan Eovaldi on that
Yup.
rotation. So, and they got some hitters. We're talking Marcus Semien. We're talking Nathaniel Lowe. We're talking Corey Seager. So yeah, Adolis Garcia. They got some hitters. So that should be a very fun series. So we're going to talk. We're going to break down the season. Looking at the latest news. Rhys Hoskins going down. Who could replace him? Talking about the starting rotation, which they did upgrade in the offseason. One of the guys that me and Harrison actually was talking about in the offseason actually came true. Pretty good at this thing. Talk about the rotation, talk about the bullpen a little bit, talk about Bryce Harper and what's the expectation for him when he comes back. And then at the end, we'll give our bold predictions for this season. We'll see how bold we can get it. Because I've seen some bold predictions on Twitter, which we'll talk about later in the show. Hopefully, our predictions aren't that bold, but we'll see. As always, make sure you are following us on Twitter at Total Sports Live. Make sure you're checking us out at totalsportslive.com as well. And also, always make sure you're checking out the podcast, checking it out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify on Anchor. And I think that's what it's called, Spotify on Anchor.
I think so. Right.
Make sure yeah, you're checking it out on there. We're probably gonna put this on Amazon Music too. So
Yup.
we got an email about that, so it'll be on there too. And there may be one more other place that will have the podcast on. I'm working through the logistics on that end. So make sure you're checking the podcast out on all your streaming platforms, and also make sure you're checking out the video edition of this podcast on Harrison's YouTube page, Harrison Brown Russo. I say your Twitter handle, but Harrison Brown
Hey
Russo
man, it's all
on
there.
you
Right.
on YouTube. The YouTube page is booming right now. He's got a new video out posted talking about the best small school prospects in this year's draft class. Actually, one of the players actually liked the tweet apparently
Sweet.
of your video. So that joint's already booming. I would not be surprised if that's 1K view by the time we finish, recording this pod. So make sure you check it out on all the draft content that he's been putting out on his channel. If you need everything you need to know, it's right there on his YouTube page. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. So, Harrison, let's talk about it. The Phillies back at it again. A fun playoff run. Shortened off season. Made some moves. A lot of expectation, a lot of optimism coming to the year, especially with the way Trea Turner was playing in WBC. Schwarber hitting a couple of Schwarber bombs in WBC, even though Mike Trout couldn't hold the pivot into the bargain here and there. Or Pete Alonso. No shade. However, we did have some sad news, report about the Phillies coming like really training with the spring training almost coming to an end with Rhys Hoskins suffering a torn ACL last week in spring training, effectively ending his season literally on a routine defensive play. You see him go down. It was tough to watch. I remember seeing the tweet. I think it was on a Thursday, right? I think it was on a Thursday last week. I think it was last Thursday or Wednesday. I remember I saw the tweet and I was just like, oh no. I heard people saying like EMT came out. I'm just like, oh crap. Like,
yeah,
what's going on? And then you see the play and I'm just like, hate to see that, especially for someone like him who's been with this organization for years, started with the organization, worked his way up, and obviously came into the year as a potentially, maybe playing his last year with the Phillies as he's a projected free agent next year. But he goes down, which means they have to find someone to step up for him. One option could be Darick Hall, who, could be his replacement at first base, who really, made some headway, made some noise last season with the Phillies. When Bryce Harper went down, he was kind of that DH spark plug they needed in the middle of the batting order. So there's a lot to digest about this Hoskins news, Harrison. Like, who do you think? Like, how do you think Darick Hall will, be at first base, and who do you think that needs to step up? Not even just for first base purposes, but just kind of, picking up that offensive production, because you're already going to be missing Bryce Harper for a short period of time, but now you're missing another big bat in Rhys Hoskins, which is, even though people get on him for his defensive miscues and things of that nature, and he'll have like a strikeout at the worst possible time, or he'll have like a streak of going 0 for 12, but then he'll come back with like a streak of like 12 for 20, like for 5 for 20 with like 3 bombs in like a 5-game span or 3-game span. What do you just think about this entire, situation?
Well, it's unfortunate for Rhys, like you mentioned, a guy who's been here in Philly for so long. And then also from the baseball side of it, entering that contract year, looking to capitalize on a great postseason run, a run where he had a lot of buzz. Obviously, the bat slam really cemented in Philly's, history. That'll always be something people talk about. So it's disappointing on that end, looking forward to seeing him capitalize on that run. And like you mentioned, already having Harper out, there is a strain on the lineup now, 1 through 9, top to bottom, the bench as well. There's going to be some guys who have to step up. I think, like we were talking about, Darick Hall is obviously the first guy in line to start at first base, been with the organization since 2016, 27 years old, entering that 28-year-old season. He was ready for the big leagues anyway. He was ready for more big league opportunities after what he did last year. 9 home runs, 16 RBIs, a 250 batting average. I think he was right on that bubble of making the roster anyway. Obviously, it's an unfortunate situation for him to get this opportunity, but nonetheless, it is an opportunity for Darick Hall to really prove he's a consistent big league player and can be an everyday first baseman. I think he has that upside, especially in the bat. Maybe there will be some struggles against left-handed pitching early on, kind of to be expected with him being a left-handed bat. Maybe it winds up being Bohm spending a little bit of time at first base to kind of supplement Hall, because Hall's obviously not going to start every game. That's kind of unrealistic. So maybe Bohm goes over to first. Schwarber has played a little bit of first, 11 games in his career, mostly with Boston. And then you've got JT Realmuto has also made some starts at first. So I think it's really Hall's. Hall's is going to take the bulk of the workload, and then those guys will kind of supplement him from there.
No, I agree with you. Hall, obviously, it's his job to lose right now before they explore any other option. Like you said, maybe it's a Bohm or Real Muto, but that's likely an off day spot. And obviously, for Real Muto to be at first, they would have to have one of their have a backup catcher to be ready to go. And right now, they're a little light at that with Marshawn and, like we talked about before the show, Marshawn and Stubbs both being a little bit banged up right now at the moment. But like you said, this is Hall's job to take over and kind of run with it. And we saw, last season, coming up, with the organization, he kind of was on one of those runs where he was just lightning the bottle. Everything he hit, it was just, he was hitting it hard. He was driving the ball with either, going over the wall or it was going for like a double, right? Everything was just hitting. He was just making solid contact, just he gets his arms extended, and if he sees that ball over the middle of the plate, he's just crushing it. And he's hit monster home runs. And last season, we're talking, he slashed 250, 282, and 5. 22 with 9 home runs, 16 RBIs. A lot of people had some issues with the 44 strikeouts, but again, in 136 at bats, 41 games, it's not great. But again, first year playing Major League Baseball consistently, guys don't get a real guys. Pitchers don't really know you, but once they start to see you a little bit more, they can start to pick up on certain things and kind of exploit those matchups. And he struggled against left-handers, as we talked about. He struggled against them. I think he was what point 0.087 against left-handers, so it wasn't good. But again, like you said, he's lefty, so I mean,
Right.
the ball's going to come out in a different way. It's going to look differently coming across the plate, but it is his job to lose. And stat that you pointed out before the show, which I thought was very important, was his stats at Lehigh Valley last season, which kind of led to him getting that move up to the big league club last year. He hit 28 home runs, 88 RBIs, 254, 330, 528. I think you see those numbers, and I think how many games were that with Lehigh Valley in 2022? Was
Let's
that
see.
had to be over 100, right? I feel like it might be because he did go back
101.
to. Yeah, I'm about to say he did go
101.
back to the minors after I think Harper came back. I think he went
Yeah.
back up to Lehigh Valley. So 100 games, 28 home runs, 88 RBIs, 254. If you're a Phillies fan, and we could play hypotheticals here, if he plays 100 games right this season, we're thinking hypothetically we'll go 100 games, and he gives you, I'm not gonna say he's gonna give you 28, right? But if he could give you 20 home runs and maybe 75 RBIs, would you be okay with that? Batting maybe 250 to 260.
I am okay with that. I was literally thinking, as long as it's in that 250 range, and anything 25 plus is a really good season. Like you said, maybe 28's a little hefty, but hey, man, a 25 home run season from Darick Hall this year. Like you said, last year, only 40 games, his first time hitting major league pitching in his career. I think it was a good way for him to get his feet wet, especially with the Phillies
Yeah,
going on to have
seriously.
that great run. You know what I mean? He was a part of it. He was a part of the big league team that year. Now, this year, take that step, be a full time big league guy. The opportunity is there to be a full-time first baseman. I mean, with a couple rest days here and there, but the job is Darick Hall's to lose for sure. So this is a big year for Darick Hall, obviously, with this opportunity.
It is. And when we talk about first base, but just talking about Hoskins, right? The Phillies are going to be missing a guy in Hoskins who hit, and pulling up his numbers right now, a guy who hit 246 last season with 30 home runs, 79 RBIs. Again, wasn't a great batting average, but over his career, Rhys Hoskins has kind of been a 240-ish hitter over his career. So 240, 242 over his career, 242 over his career, and this kind of been trending that way for a long time. But still, 20,
He,
30 home runs last season.
he's a power guy. That's what he is. Even if he's hitting 240, if he's hitting those 30 home runs, that's what you're looking for. And we were talking before the show, probably seems like, after this season, he'll get a 1-year deal to return to the Phillies, maybe somewhere 10 million plus. I think that would be
Right.
fair.
Yeah, I would think so. Unless Darick Hall really ascends and just
Right.
takes off
Takes the job, yeah.
and you said takes the job. But then, like you said, you could even bring Hoskins back and he becomes your permanent DH too.
DH. Yep, that's where that DH spot comes in really handy. And I think Darick Hall could do that. And then he'd be entering 28, 29 years old. That's at least 3 or 4 years, entering his 30s where he could be the Phillies first baseman comfortably.
Right. Exactly. Until, De La Cruz, if he continues to make his upward trend, take over and
Right.
get up to the major league club, but we're like a couple years down the road.
You
With him
never
taking
know.
place.
They could do so
Right.
many different things between now and then. It's especially at first base, you do have some flexibility.
Definitely have some flexibility. And, talking about Hoskins, like I said, career 242, 246 last season with 30 home runs, 79 RBI. That's a lot of production that this team is going to be missing in that
Right.
lineup, in addition to what you're missing from Bryce Harper. So who does this team need to step up to kind of replace those numbers? I think we all kind of know the answer who needs to step up, but don't want to put pressure on them. But I gotta think Nick Castellanos has to be the guy to kind of step in and pick up that production that they're losing, with Rhys Hoskins.
This is an important season for Castellanos before the injury. I mean, the Phillies had a lot of
Yeah.
success. Castellanos was a part of it, but he really didn't get going like he did in Cincinnati and even back in his days
Mhm.
in Detroit. Like the Phillies were really hoping he would to complement the lineup. And I think that's a big part of the reason they went out and got Trea Turner this year. Now, with that said, Trea Turner really does a lot for the lineup at post Hoskins as well. Gives the lineup so much versatility. Schwarber doesn't have to lead off anymore. It can be Trea Turner. Turner can really hit 1 through 4. So if guys are taking off days, if there's another injury through the year, Turner gives you a lot of versatility. I think he'll be a big part of it. But like you said, Castellanos is going to be a really important part of this lineup this season. If he can get some of the power back that he had in Cincinnati, because he has such a natural swing. When he's on, when he's seeing the ball well, that swing produces power. That swing produces RBI doubles all day. So Castellanos, I'm a fan of Castellanos. I think that he's a good piece for the
Me too.
Phillies. I think that he will get his bat going this year. Like I mentioned, that swing is such a smooth swing. I think Castellanos, especially in the time that Harper's out, is going to be important. And he'll get some DH days this year. Him and Schwarber will kind of split the time at DH. Early. When Harper comes back, he'll obviously take over at DH. But at least the first month or two, Castellanos and Schwarber will kind of split time at DH. And I think that could help Castellanos as well at the plate.
Yeah, it definitely should. Even though he was surprisingly well playing defense last season in the playoffs, it wasn't the best
In the
defensive performance, but
playoffs.
he stepped up in the playoffs and made some nice catches and
In the
some
regular
game
season, there was
saving.
some tough
Yeah,
days.
regular season was some tough days. Even in the postseason, there was a lot of tough games where he wasn't seeing the ball, and you were just like, stop swinging at the first pitch. And the pitchers kind of played at that part. But listen, I need Nick to just come in, like you said. Imagine it's the Cincinnati days. Taylor up, tighten up the jersey. Felt like the jersey was a little bit droopy on him last season, and wasn't like he was in Cincinnati, where it was looking tight, and he was just locked in, chain swinging, everything like that. That's the Castellanos that they need to see. And if you're a Phillies fan, if you can get the Castellanos that hit 34 home runs and 100 had 100 RBIs and batted 309 in his last season in Cincinnati, you'll take it. Shoot, I would even go to say that if you get the Castellanos that played in 2018 with the Detroit Tigers, where he had 23 home runs, 89 RBIs, and batted 298, you'll take that type of
No
production.
complaints.
Anything
Especially that
better than
298.
last season, right? Anything better than what it was last season, where he only had 13 home runs, 62 RBIs, and only batted 263. 263 is actually not a problem. That's actually not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem was the power wasn't there that we saw the previous season in a hitter-friendly park. That I would say that's more hitter-friendly than Great American Ballpark out in Cincinnati.
It's going to be a really important season for him. They signed him to a 3-year deal, 4-year deal with an out after the third, I believe.
I think so.
Okay,
I
so it's an
believe
important
so.
year. It could be,
Let
if
me
he struggles
see.
again this year, it could be someone at the winter meetings next year who's potentially getting shopped.
Yeah. The earliest he can be a free agent is 2027. So 20 million, 20 million, 20 million. Next
Still
couple
under
years with the
control for a
Phillies.
while.
Yeah,
Still
still
under
under control
control
for
for
a
a
while,
while.
but
Would be really nice if
definitely
he
want
could
to.
get going.
Right. You want to be in a spot where he gets going, because you don't want to be like 2-3 years in the contract and
Right.
you're thinking, oh man, we might got to move him for something just because he's
Yep.
just not working out. But big things for Castellanos, I think, this year. If he can get started opening week, start to hit the ball. Obviously, he didn't hit the ball well in spring training. It was 224 with 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 15 strikeouts. You don't like to see 15 strikeouts, but again, spring training, guys are trying stuff. You're not really
Right.
seeing the same pitchers. Pitchers are trying things, so you're not really game planning for those guys in spring training. You're working on things.
He started last year with a home run versus the A's. I believe it was
Yes, he
opening
did.
day too. Yeah, I believe it was
Yes, he
formally
did.
opening day. So that could be an encouraging sign for how he could start the year this year against Jacob deGrom and the Rangers, or maybe the Yankees the next weekend.
Will he hit a home run off of Jacob?
Yeah, right. Maybe I shouldn't have said deGrom. Maybe let's go Evaldi or whoever the Rangers
Evaldi,
are
I could
starting.
say. I could
Yeah.
say against DeGrom, he's
Right. Yeah. Maybe not.
and against DeGrom, he has 4 strikeouts. I mean,
Okay.
It's all right. It's all
How
right.
about
I
the fact
mean,
the
you
Phillies
can.
get DeGrom to start the season after facing
I
him in New York for
know.
all these years? How about that?
It's funny. It's funny. It's funny how that plays out, right? That you did get to see Jacob DeGrom, who was kind of like a thorn in their side last year.
Yeah.
Not so much Max Scherzer because I feel like they actually figured out Max Scherzer,
Hmm.
and they didn't really figure out Jacob DeGrom, who's kind of been a thorn in their side. But yeah, it's kind of funny
Yeah.
how that plays out for them, that they do get to see Jacob DeGrom to start the season. They'll see Ovaldi in Sunday. They actually have the Sunday night game. Sunday night
Oh,
game will
nice.
be projected. We're talking Taijuan Walker and Perez. Apparently, this is how the schedule works out for opening week. Um, Texas, obviously, that game will be on ESPN Plus. So, and our defending champs are getting the red carpet right now to open up the season. They get the ESPN Plus treatment for those in the city that can't watch the game. That'll be Nola versus DeGrom, and then they won't play that Friday for some odd reason, even though they play in the dome. They'll play
Yeah.
that
Wow.
Saturday. Wheeler versus Avaldi, 4:05 on Fox. So they get the Fox treatment to start, and then they get the Sunday night treatment. Taijuan Walker versus Nathan Avaldi. Then Monday they fly from Texas to New York for 3 game set against the Yankees. Don't know who the projected pitcher will be for that one. Probably Falter
Yeah.
against
Probably.
Cortez, not listed here. And then Tuesday, they're back on TV again, national TV. They're getting the TBS treatment. Matt Strom versus Domingo
Yeah.
Herman. So a lot of national TV work for the Phillies. They can't disappoint.
That's that World Series treatment. You know, you're coming off the World Series run, a lot of buzz,
Right?
a lot of fans in Citizens Bank Park last year. So maybe hoping a lot of people will tune in while they're on the road. Hopefully, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Phillies buzz. How about Matt Strom to back end that on the TBS game? Probably about 3 innings of work, similar to what Tampa does a lot with their bullpen games. What do you think about that?
I mean, when you look at their rotation, you kind of have that affordability to do so, especially with the 3 guys that you have, right? You have um Nola, you have Wheeler. You know those 2 guys are going to get it done. Even Falter, right?
Right.
Falter, Falter. I think everybody thought they obviously left the spot open for whoever was going to take between. They kind of left that 5th spot open for competition. So you're talking about the Christopher Sanchez's, the Falters, the Andrew Painter, who they probably really hoped took that next step last season. But I mean this in the spring, but dealing with some injuries, not nothing
Yeah.
be too concerning. But again, he's 19 years old. He still has a
Right. And
long career ahead of him. So
enough to keep him out for the time being, enough to send
yeah,
him to the
enough to
minors
keep
to
him out for
start
the
the
time.
year. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And you with a guy like Falter, I think I think, like I said, when you have those 3 guys there, and then Falter, going there, who actually pitched really well last season, 3.86 ERA last season, 84 innings pitched, um, had 74 strikeouts, gave up 16 bombs, but I'm not going to really crucify him for that. And then what you look at him, what he did, in the second half of the season, he had a 3.38 ERA last season, 11 games when they really need him down the stretch. Really picked it up for him. So when you have those 3 guys, you have Falter. I think they're okay with going with Strom, right? You don't have no other option really. You don't have
Right.
nobody in the minors that you can bring up at this point in time that you want to stretch. I think probably this early in the season. Strom hasn't started, I think, in a while. I think I read somewhere like 2018, 2019. It's been a minute, but I think I read somewhere, I don't know, I could be wrong, that I think they have like 65 to 70 pitches max on
Not
Strom
terrible.
for game for the first game of season, which is not terrible, especially because he probably knows going into it like I'm actually going to start this game. So
Yeah.
against a team in the Yankees that he's seen a lot in his career, that could actually
Right.
bode well for him as well too. So I think, like you said, a 3 inning guy. If you get 3, shoot, if you can get 4, I think you'll
Four would
be
be
okay with
great,
that.
right? Like
Right.
4 is almost like, wow, great job. Like, and then the 5th inning, I think you move on to the bullpen. That's kind of what I would expect going into it. Um, But ultimately, Ranger Suarez coming back and then Bailey Falter being the 5, I think that's really the more ideal scenario. Strom goes to the bullpen long term. And then hopefully Bailey
Mm-hmm.
Falter, like you were saying, hopefully Bailey Falter can really take a step this year. It feels like we've seen some flashes. We've seen some moments where it really feels like Bailey Falter could contribute to the Phillies rotation. Hopefully this is the year. Similar to Darick Hall, Bailey Falter has a big opportunity this year.
Oh, I agree. I think he does too. I think he can really, you know, I think he can do some things. And like we said, he 3.86 ERA is not great, but again, we're talking about someone who's potentially a fifth starter. I think he'll take that. He'll take
Right.
that type of ERA. And you look at how he pitched, especially down the stretch, where in 11 starts he had a 3.38 ERA. Like he stepped up for him in moments where they really need him, especially in that month of September. He was one of the unsung heroes for them. Taking the ball in that doubleheader down in DC where they needed that game to kind of keep them in position. He really pitched well in the second half. So, like you said, if he can carry that over, obviously in the postseason, he only pitched in one game. It was against the Padres, game 4. Gave up 4 earned runs. Wasn't really nothing great. Phillies won that game, though, I think. Yeah, it says the result 10-6. They did win that game. But his first postseason start. But like you said, if he builds off of what he did in the play from the regular season, he could be okay. And in spring training, he's been solid in spring training. 2.76 ERA in five starts, 16 in the third innings pitch, 14 strikeouts. Gave up 3 home runs, 18 hits. K per 9, 7.7, which isn't horrible. Hits per 9. 9.9. Again, not horrible, but 2.76. Again, if you get 2.76 for your fifth starter, you're in great shape. But even if you get anything under 4, I think you should be okay. So, yeah, I think I'm about to say the bullpen. I think the start rotation will be fine. So where they won't be taxing their bullpen a lot like they probably had to piecemeal a little bit together, last season.
Yeah, the bullpen in the past has certainly been a main stressing point, a main position that the Phillies need to upgrade. This year, it feels like it could be a strength for them. Maybe not a strength, but at least not a huge weakness. It feels like they've improved enough. Getting Soto from the Tigers was really an underrated, low-key move. That's a two-time
Very
All-Star
underrated.
that they
Yeah.
went and picked up. Obviously, Craig Kimbrell is a much bigger name, someone that a lot more people are familiar with. It's a nice pickup as well. And then how about the guys from the Giants, Junior Marte and then Andrew Vasquez, 2 guys who snuck
Yeah,
on to the
and Mar
opening
and
day
Mar and
roster.
Marte and Marte's been kind of. I've read that he's been lighting it up in spring training. I think he those 99
I believe so.
in the
People are
fireballer.
big fans of Marte. Yeah, I got 98-mile-an-hour fastball here, 97-mile-an-hour sink, and an 86-mile-an-hour slider. Has a nice slider to go with it. A guy who had a lot of buzz down in Clearwater. Sounds like a lot of people in the Phillies are a big fan of him. So, and then Vasquez is a big 6'6" left-hander as well. Big, tall
Mm-hmm.
lefty. Always nice to have in the bullpen. Can never get enough quality innings out of left-handers, and had a pretty good spring. 14 Ks in 10 innings pitched. Some upside there, to say the least.
Yeah, you gotta love it. And obviously, they still have Sir Anthony Dominguez, and you still have Jose Alvarado, who a lot of people remember him giving up that bomb to Jordan. But for the most part, he was really good last year. So you have all those pitchers, and it brought up a good question that you had before the show. We were talking about it. What do they do at closer, right? Because they
Right.
have so many great options. They can obviously go with one guy, but then you can also kind of play with matchups and go with the hot hand and who have the better matchups because you have the guy that can do it, right? You have Sir Anthony, you got Alvarado, you got Kimbrel, you got Soto, you know
Even
those
Strom,
4 guys,
maybe.
and yeah, and even Strom, those 5 guys all probably have save closing experience. You
Right.
can really just play roulette and just throw any of them out there when you have a matchup or ever how the game dictates.
Play the matchup. Like you said, closer by committee. I think Dominguez and Alvarado probably lead the way, but Krimmel has a
Right.
bunch of save experience. Obviously, a well-known guy from his time with the Braves and the Cubs. And then Soto as well. And like I mentioned, when Strom is out of the rotation, out of his kind of 3 inning starts, he's another guy who can come in and close games. So I like that. And it seems like that's what Rob Thompson kind of leans towards anyway, is going closer
Yeah.
by committee. rolling with the hot hand a little bit, rolling with the matchup, and approaching it that way, which I actually kind of like. I think it's a little bit less traditional, but it might be a little more practical.
I mean, it reminds me of how in football, right, where they do running back by committee, you go with the hot hand, you don't really have that
Exactly.
set guy. And like I say, he's doing the same thing. And yeah, while it might be unconventional, I mean, who knew that the Tampa Bay Rays like 2-3 years ago was
Right.
going to make we're going to make openers of things where now everybody's doing it. They're like,
Yep.
oh, everybody thought it was crazy. Like the Rays are starting a reliever. Like, what is this? Like they're starting Jeremy Spriggs, who I think Springs, who was a reliever at first. Now he's caught on and actually been like a solid starter. But when they started doing it, everybody was looking like, what is going on here? Why is there a start? Why are there relievers starting the game? But they found a way to where it was like, this actually works. You can start a reliever and get quality stuff out of them. So if Rob Thompson, like you said, he had success with it last year, right? Obviously, he leaned on Dominguez and Alvarado a lot down the stretch, especially in the playoffs in
Right.
September. But now he has, like you said, more chess pieces to mess around with, where you could throw a guy in like Kimbrel who's looking to bounce back after a rough last year, or a Soto who we knew, was excellent last season for Detroit. But now he comes into a spot, no disrespect to the Tigers, comes to a spot where he's on a contending team, you hope, and will be in, pressure moments to get things done. So they're in a good spot overall. Like you said, bullpen, if you're a Phillies fan, you can't be disappointed at obviously getting Trea Turner, to add to the lineup, adding the Taijuan Walker the to the rotation to give you a solid number 3, number 4 when Suarez comes back, and then you upgrade the bullpen and get some more pieces to go to the back end to give you that arsenal to kind of keep you replenished. Probably was a perfect offseason for the Phillies for as short as it was. They made the moves necessary that they needed to make.
I think they improved the team. I think the biggest losses are 2 injuries. Is the fact that Bryce Harper is
Yeah,
not going to start the year, and now that Rhys Hoskins is out for the year. I
Hoskins,
think
right.
compared to the Eagles, who are coming off a Super Bowl run as well, they're losing a lot of free agents. The Phillies are returning a lot of their guys, and then also went out and added the likes of, like you said, Trea Turner, Soto, Taijuan Walker. So I think in a way they improved their team. Obviously, baseball is a funny sport. On paper, sounds great until things go out, and we even saw it last year. The Phillies struggled through June, fired Joe Girardi, backed into the playoffs, wouldn't have made the playoffs in every other MLB season in history, but
Right.
got that third wild card spot.
Right.
It wound up in the World Series. So baseball is a funny sport. We always see teams hit their stride late. The Nationals a few years back kind of reminds me of
Yeah,
that. So, let's see what the Phillies can do. Let's see what they can kind of put together in these early months and go from there.
most definitely. This is a Total Sports Live podcast here on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast from. I was about to say Anchor, but I can't say it anymore, which hurts my heart. This
Right.
is Jovan and Harrison breaking down those Philadelphia Phillies. We mentioned him and, just now, but Bryce Harper, I think that's the biggest question mark, right? When will he return to the field? He wasn't placed on the 60-day injured list, which is a good sign. That means there's a chance that we could see Harper sometime this season, and he can come back technically before May 29th, but that might be wishful thinking if you're a Phillies fan. He comes back before that date. But what do we think? What should fans think? What should be their realistic expectations for him? Coming off of Tommy John surgery, and probably won't be playing a lot of field, probably going back to DH role, which I think he thrived in last season and had an incredible postseason run where he really showed everybody, I think, in the baseball world that he is still him and that he still is that guy. Everybody talks about the Judges and, the Altuves and Otanis and the Mike Trouts and everybody else. And Bryce Harper kind of reminded the whole sports world, like, hey, I can still do this. I'm not, just the guy that puts some numbers. Like, I actually make plays in the postseason and, hit game-winning home runs when the moment's the brightest. So what should fans, when he does return to the starting lineup, to the batting order, I mean, what do you think what should be fans' realistic expectations for him, coming up this season?
Well, first of all, let's go patience. I mean, like I was just saying,
Right.
the early months of baseball, I mean, obviously every game is important. Every game matters. The game comes down to a season.
Yeah.
But like I said last year, man, the Phillies fired
do
their
not
manager
do
in
not
June.
panic. Do not panic
Exactly.
in April and May, we already know which will
Of
happen
course.
if you're
Of
on
course.
Phillies Twitter will panic when like some wild stuff happens, like a game is blown in a knife into the world. Then you remind yourself, oh, it's only game 9. There's still
Exactly.
150 something games left.
Even when it's game 99, you're not out of it. You've got a lot of time left, even at that point. So I think that's going to be the first thing. And I think, honestly, even if Harper, we mentioned it, he's not on the 60-day IL, which is an encouraging sign. Likely, I mean, the earliest time is mid-May. It feels like
Right.
I don't think there's any way he comes back in April. Even early May seems
No.
way out of the realm of possibility. And honestly, if he has to sit past May 29th, I don't think that's the worst thing either. I think it gives some other guys opportunities to kind of get their feet wet, get a lot of at-bats early in the year. And then when they move to the bench, they move to those pinch hitting spots, they already have 100+ at-bats in their arsenal. That's guys like Jake Cave, Edmundo Sosa, who will get some extended opportunities, especially with Hoskins going out. So I think that would be my thing. Patience. I think Bryce can certainly still put together a nice, respectable season. And if after the All-Star break, Bryce is really hitting his stride, I don't think we'll be worried about the concerns in April and May. And when he came back, if it was June 15th as opposed to May 29th or even June 30th, Harper misses the All-Star game this year. Oh, well, it's more so about what he's doing towards the end of the year, what he's doing in that September month as they're leading into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I'm glad you said it, right? It's while it's optimistic that he's not on the 60-day EL, anything that if fans expect him to come back in April or May, probably shouldn't look forward to that. Now, sometime in June, mid-June, yeah, I think definitely you can start to see him, come back. But like you said, it does open up the opportunity for other guys to get at bats and to kind of get comfortable and kind of know their role and kind of saying like, all right, you're going to get a start. Like you said, we're probably going to see a lot of Sosa this year. Maybe we'll see some Dalton Guthrie who made the team and was on the roster last year. And then, like you said, a guy like Jake Cave who kind of was one of the highlights of spring training. And a guy who's a career 235 hitter. He was Barry Bonds in the in spring training, hitting 440 with 3 home runs and 14 RBIs, had 2 stolen bases, had 16 strikeouts, which is not encouraging, but he had 4 doubles and 3 triples. Like, this man was untouchable in spring training. So, but you have things like that happen. You have guys like that who are looking for an opportunity, or probably will want this opportunity for them. It could work out, and then, like we said earlier, with Hoskins, this is a chance, an opportunity for a Nick Castellanos to really step up as well and kind of bridge that gap. Bring that power that they're missing from Harper, or that guy that getting extra base hits, right? For Trea Turner, a guy that can probably feast on extra base hits, and we've already seen what he did. We already saw what he did in the WBC, and I mean, he hasn't stopped that with how he's hitting in spring training. I think he hit another spring training home run after recording this podcast. He hit another one, so he's locked in right now. He's at a different level of locked in, which is like kind of scary to think about because he's not really a power guy, but he's like absolutely mashing at the plate.
You're my betting guy. If I'm ever thinking about any type of bet, I'm running it by you first. Trea Turner, home run, one of these first few games. He's hitting the ball really well right now. I feel like every time he steps up the plate, he could hit it out.
I mean, honestly, you got to look at it. Maybe not against a Jacob deGrom, we might not do it, but if we're talking Nathan Eovaldi or even Martin Perez, I know Perez was good last year. I think we got to look at it because, like you said, he's been scorching hot, and even obviously he's hit some monster home runs in spring training, but in the WBC, I mean,
right,
the dude was hitting bombs. We're talking about a grand slam. He's just, the ball is just lifting off of his bat. Like, it's not wasting no time getting out of the park. And this is a guy who at most has hit 28 home runs. Well, that was in total between Washington and the Dodgers, but at most 21 home runs last season with the Dodgers. We're talking about he's going to a park in Citizen Bank Park where he could, and this is probably a bold prediction. I know I've seen some people say he could have 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases, which I think is ridiculous to say that, but I could see a 30 home run season from Trea Turner in this.
I was going to ask you 30 for 30? 30 or 30-30 club? 30 for 30, that's ESPN. 30-30 club?
I can see it. I can see it. I think that's a bold prediction, but I think I can see it. because
The
they're
bases
going
are
to
bigger this
need
year too.
they're going to need it. They're going to need it. They're going to need him to kind of set the plate, and for them, they actually have a leadoff hitter. No disrespect to Kyle Schwarber, who did really good at that spot, but now you put a guy in Turner that knows how to set the table, and I think that's only going to mean, good things, for this team, going forward.
I think that's a good way to describe it. Turner knows how to set the table. Turner can really set things up, get on base. Where Schwarber was that
Mm-hmm.
lightning in the bottle guy at that leadoff
Right.
spot. You're hoping to go up 1-0 on the first pitch when Schwarber's your leadoff guy. Turner
Which he
is
which
much
he which
more.
he did, which he
He
did
did.
sometimes. I mean,
He did.
he set the tone. He set the tone in that one World Series game where he crushed the pitch. I mean, he crushed that bomb in against Yu Darvish in the playoff game. Just actually was like what 480, 450, just
He
crushed
killed
out
it.
of Petco, and then he took Darvish, deep again in the WBC. Kind of got his
Right.
number right now. But yeah, you're right about Schwarber. He's kind of the guy where you're just hoping that he gets on base. You're not really looking for him to like take pitches and kind of work the count. You're
Right.
looking for him lock in on your pitch and like drive the ball out of the park.
Definitely. So I think that will kind of help the Phillies lineup overall, especially like we've been saying, it's kind of the theme of the show. With Harper and Hoskins out, that's guys who are going to be in
Mm-hmm.
your top four. Trea Turner being your leadoff guy, I think makes it a more well-rounded start of the lineup.
It definitely does. And before we wrap up the podcast, we do got to do our bold predictions. That's one thing we were not going to forget on the podcast. We got to do our bold predictions for this season. What do we think? Like I said, some people think Trea Turner, I see him on the timeline thinking he'll go 40 for 40. I don't know about that. But like we just mentioned, 30 for 30 is definitely possible. Not 30 for 30. Jeez, he's 30 for
And we're all
30.
off. That's my fault. That's
Right.
my fault. We're all off now. Yeah, it's on me.
30 for 30. 30 is definitely a possibility with the way he's been hitting right now. He's only playing in a hitter friendly park, so I think that's possible. Any other bold predictions you think that could be happening? Any bold predictions that you like for the Phillies this season, Harrison?
How about this? I think the Phillies will be more aggressive than usual at the deadline. I think we've heard about Dave Dombrowski being aggressive at the deadline. We've seen some flashes of it. Last year, they go out and get Brandon Marsh, Noah Syndergaard, Sosa. I think this is the year where they really go and make an aggressive move. Maybe it's another starter if Bailey Falter doesn't work out. Maybe it's an additional piece of the bullpen. Maybe it's a solidified guy at closer. I think the closer by committee conversation we just had all stands, but if you have a legit locked in closer who's that guy who every night you know what you're going to get, you have to at least consider that. So I think that's going to be my bold prediction. I don't think it'll be a first baseman, but hypothetically, if Darick Hall, either whatever happened with Darick Hall, if it didn't really work out, maybe it's a first baseman. But I think in general this year the Phillies will be more aggressive at the deadline.
I like it. I like it. For me, my bold prediction, I got a couple. I got two. My bold prediction, I think Darick Hall hits 25 home runs this
Hey
season.
now.
I'm going there. I know people probably don't want to hear that, but I mean, if he's hitting 25 home runs in I'll say the Eagles, the Phillies will be in excellent shape and won't have to make those aggressive moves at the deadline. But
Right.
again, when Harper does come back, you could move into DH, could do a lot of things. But if he brings that power and starts to turn around and hit left-handers good, that can only mean good things for him. So I'm gonna go with Darick Hall, 25 home runs. And then for pitching, we're gonna go pitching here. We're gonna go pitching. I don't know if this is gonna be bold, but I think it's I think it's gonna happen. I don't think it's bold because he's been really good in the last couple of years with Philly. I think Zach Wheeler wins the NL Cy Young this year.
Wow, I like it. I like it a lot.
I know
What are the
that's
betting odds
super
on
bold.
that? I know that's that's going to be hard to pull up right away, but I'm intrigued to see what the betting odds are on that. Who are some of the guys that we would think would be NL Cy Young? Maybe a Scherzer type, Verlander with the Mets.
Good
Who am I
question. Let's
forgetting?
see here. Let me see. MLB futures on FanDuel. NL Cy Young top top five. You have Sandy Alcantara at plus
Yeah.
500, Corbin Burns at plus 600, Justin Verlander plus 700, Max Scherzer at plus 800, Spencer Strider at plus 1,000, Zach Gallen at plus 1,100, Zach Wheeler plus
Okay.
1,800,
Not bad odds.
Aaron Nola is at plus 1,300, so Nola has higher odds. But I think if Zach Wheeler, obviously he was dealing with some injuries. I don't call it injuries. I think he was just tired last season, but he still was really good. 12 and 7, 282 ERA coming off of last season where he had 278 and finished second in Cy Young. The year before that, his first year in Philly, which was the COVID year, 292. The man has been pitching under 30 his time with the Phillies. Like, he's in his prime. I think we're getting the prime pitching of Zach Wheeler, a guy that can rack up strikeouts and rack up innings. Obviously, he took a step back of 153, but the year that he did finish second in Cy Young voting had 247 strikeouts, which led the league in 213 innings pitched. So I think this could be the year that maybe Zach Wheeler takes that step and wins the Cy Young. I think if he gets the 200 inning pitch and he can rack up the strikeouts, which we know he's capable of doing because we saw in the postseason what he was able to do. He was downright, dominant. We're talking about NLCS against the Padres, 16 strikeouts. Even against the Astros, he had 8 strikeouts. And you can make the case that in that last game, he probably could have stayed in longer and won it. And we saw that he wanted to stay in longer and wanted that opportunity. So I think just knowing how last season ended for him, I think he's going to use it for motivation and come out and really establish himself again as one of the top pitchers in the game. So going to Zach Wheeler to win NL Cy Young.
I like it, man, especially from a betting perspective with those odds. I think that's a very good play. Coming off, like you said, a tough end of the season, a lot of momentum. And, I look back to when they signed him. I'll be open and honest here. I was not the biggest fan of the deal. I like
I
Wheeler's,
remember. I
of
remember.
course,
I remember
right?
that.
I'm sure Nick would too. Me and Nick had multiple shows where I was like, listen, Wheeler's a good pitcher. He's a good 2 or 3 guy, but that type of money, they gave him ace money.
Right.
He's exceeded expectations. He's really elevated his game in Philly compared to where he was with the Mets, where he was a top prospect. He was a guy who everybody kind of thought was going to be a big part of the Mets' future. And then Harvey overtakes him. Syndergaard overtakes him. It's kind of like, well, what's going on with Wheeler? Man, has he found it in Philly. So great to see that.
And look at those 2 guys that you just mentioned.
Crazy how it plays out.
And how their careers have kind of gone up and down.
That's baseball, man.
Syndergaard's kind of refound himself, but Harvey's kind of been on the down and down.
That's baseball, man. It's a funny sport. Nobody is ever, completely out, until the day they retire and give up. Anybody can find a late spark in baseball or find their momentum. So I like to play Wheeler for Cy Young, especially with those odds, 1,800. I like to play.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that. I didn't want to go Alec Bohm, to hit 20 homers because I've heard people saying 2025, which I think, I think Bohm, the way he's been hitting, I think he's good. I think he's going to have a big year. Like you said, he's going to have a good year. But Darick Hall, I think this is going to be the year of the Hall, long ball Hall. I think he's going to do it.
25 is exactly where we said too, like that 25 plus. It's a really good season from Hall, so that would determine it.
I think he'll do it. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Total Sports Live podcast. Obviously, we will revisit these these things mid season. Obviously, we'll have more Phillies podcasts in between them, but we will revisit that mid season to see where we're at. Hopefully, we're looking pretty good on those and not looking like, oh God, this team's like 6, 10, 12 games out of first place.
Yeah, right. Hopefully aggressive at the deadline in the good way. Hopefully they're not selling off pieces and
selling off pieces and blowing it all up. I don't think they will. I think they'll be all right.
I think so too.
They'll be good. But again, thanks for everybody for tuning into another edition of the Total Sports Live podcast. As always, again, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Total Sports Live. Follow me on Twitter at Jovan10. Follow Harrison at Harry Brown-Russo. If you're watching the video, obviously you can see it scrolling right down on the beautiful screen right there for you if you want to follow us on Twitter. Again, make sure you're checking out the podcast, downloading, subscribing, and listening on your platforms, at Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the streaming platforms we can get it from. Obviously, Apple Music, we will be working to get that on there as well, and maybe one other place that we're working on getting the show listened to. If you listen to online radio, we're trying to get an opportunity there to put that on there. So we'll have more information about that soon, and make sure you check out the website Total Sports Live. .com, and make sure you're subscribed to Harrison's YouTube page if you haven't. If you missed this episode, you want to catch it again, it'll be there live and direct video portion on there. Harrison Brown-Russo. Hit the subscribe button. He's almost to 500 subscribers. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the video, check out his other draft content that he's been putting out, as we're only a month away from the draft.
I
So
know.
2023 draft season wrapping up shortly, but here at Total Sports Live, draft season never ends. We will be moving
365.
we will move into 2024. Right when 2023 draft season over, we're moving to
Caleb Williams or
2024.
Drake May. That's
Hey, there you
coming up
hey,
next,
there you
right?
go. That's gonna be it.
Yeah. Hey, how about the shift? How
That's
about
gonna be
Nick and
the
Francisco over at the shift? If you enjoy baseball, made
yeah.
it this far in the pod, hop on over to the shift, check out their podcast. A lot of great stuff on the World Baseball Classic previewing this season. Two great guys. Definitely go check that podcast out as well.
Oh yeah, definitely check out the shift with those guys. They do, like you said, they do a great job. I think they do have a YouTube page, so make sure you're following
Yep.
them on YouTube. They on all the streaming platforms. Make sure you subscribe there. So yeah, make sure you do all those things. Keep on the lookout. We will be back next week doing another pod. Don't know what we're talking about. We'll probably be talking about what happened the first week with the Phillies, and probably getting you ready for the Sixers in the playoffs, because the NBA regular season is wrapping up too. So we'll probably give you a little bit of everything in next week's show. We'll probably be going bouncing around the sports teams, and obviously the stars will be starting up soon too. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. So make sure you're subscribing. Maybe we'll have some interviews too. So make sure you're subscribing, tuning in. The podcast will be rolling out fast and furious. So for me and Harrison, everyone have a good one, and we'll talk to you all very soon.